Milan for this, and I do hope we can meet each other in person as soon as possible, but it's great still to be able to share ideas, discuss. So thanks to Barry for organizing this opportunity. I do want to say, please stick around for the coffee sessions. I had a really great chat with Ricardo from Shell yesterday. Don't know if you're back on the line, but it was only a one-to-one chat. So we had a great one-to-one chat, but there were supposed to be 8 other people in the room. So do hang around for the coffee and networking sessions. It's great to meet people in a smaller setting. So what I want to talk to you about today, and we might try and get a bit of interaction going on, so do be ready, is MLOps, machine learning operations. Now, it's obviously a feature of our product along with everything else you need to democratize data science, but that's really the last thing that I'll say about Dataiku. Today is about the principles and how we recommend building your business case for MLOps. And the trick with that business case is that you need to explain it to your stakeholders. Preceding discussion talked a lot about that. So we need to reach our stakeholders in language that they understand to explain to them why MLOps is needed, because us data people might care about all of the technical challenges here, but they don't care at all. They just want results. So, and we and our customers have found that using this theme of resilience really resonates much better with the business because it's using their language. And obviously it's become even clearer over the last year why resilience is needed, why we need to be able to bounce back when we're hit with unexpected challenges. But we can't wait until the next pandemic to build resilience into the way that our data teams work. So what will I talk about and what order today? A bit of motivation. So, just catch you up on what is MLOps, why does resilience matter? What happens if you don't solve this? Bit of education. So what makes it so difficult to achieve resilience in data teams? And then what are the principles that underlie achieving resilience through MLOps? And finally, some actions that you can take. So some things that we recommend to get started that you can do on any technology, and a couple of customer stories along the way there. So let's start with the simplest definition that we've seen. So we quite like this one. MLOps is the processes and tools that allow organized.
Sorry, are you having a presentation? We don't see, we just see you.
Sorry.
No problem. I was waiting for that, but
I was so happy to just get on.
We are happy as well to see you.
And I had it all set up. Agenda, there's your 1 second view of the agenda. There you go. So you can read that yourself. So let's start with the simplest definition. What you can see immediately, right, is that this definition, it goes beyond tools, right? It's not a definition about, deployment pipelines or, monitoring. It's about why you might want this. MLOps is not just about technology. It's about all the things that you need to scale the impact. But obviously, scaling impact through machine learning brings some risks. Does anybody want to put in chat or come off mute and shout out a challenge that you might meet if you try to scale machine learning? Anyone brave enough? Not today.
I believe it's
go
yeah.
Marina. Yeah.
It's definitely the ability to keep monitoring what happens in terms of if our prediction or diagnosis are correct, but also what would happen if to make sure that we are really predicting or avoiding things that will happen. Because when we start, we are sure about that, but then once it's running and at the operational level, you never know what would happen if you didn't have that. So you don't want to end up doing things that are unuseful or wrong.
So if what impact does is change the way the world operates, how do you continue to know what would have happened without it? And then spot things that might go wrong. And obviously, if you're going to scale this, you can't have data scientists staring at huge rooms full of dashboards, right? So that's a problem that we need to solve. Does anyone else want to offer a challenge that they've seen, perhaps, as they've moved beyond a couple of models?
Just to introduce it to the participants again, there is an option to raise hand so that we can unmute you and you can speak. So we have one raised hand. Let's see. Yes, unmute. Now let's listen to Joanna Feiti from Air Liquid. Joanna, can you, you're unmute, if you can just speak, activate your mic.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe another danger of scaling up with machine learning, and we see it in our business, that is healthcare, is the fact that our people, our workers may not take the data in the right way. We may have data discrepancy. Our data quality is not the right one. So, and that's why we implemented internally a project of data quality before launching a machine learning project.
That's great.
Thank you.
So we've already had a couple of, so one is just how do you put the model that worked when you were doing R&D, how do you put it into production? That's the most technical part of the challenge, but even that involves lots of process problems and all of that. But Marina, you raised the monitoring, right? So how do we get the right metrics and tools to monitor these models properly? And then Joanna, you raised effectively a problem that stems from insufficient governance, which is why you're reaching back to data quality, because if particularly in healthcare, I can imagine if the data quality doesn't support what machine learning is going to do at scale, then you've got a massive governance failure. And then obviously, another one that you could imagine is once you've got 10 or 100 or 1,000 machine learning models running in production, you can't just leave them there, sitting there. And all the monitoring in the world won't help you manage that problem. So you need to manage them like any asset in some kind of life cycle. And so kind of what, we like to talk about it in that non-technical, not purely technical way, because across these 5 stages that you can think about in that life cycle, a lot of the conversation and the tooling is just about, the technical enablers. How do we develop, deploy, and then maybe monitor? Right, but that's just the technical stuff that you need to get the model into production, if you like. But the business value of doing it properly, the business value of MLOps is actually only delivered once you monitor, iterate, and then govern. And so putting them in a line like this kind of shows that there's a danger that the technical people might only care about the left-hand side here, and the business value people might only care about the right-hand side, and you might miss important opportunities or important risks. And why is it so difficult to solve? For me, it comes down to the idealized model of how you do data science on the left that some of us learned, and that one's based on crisp DM, which goes back a long time. That worked great for teams of 1 or 2, building relatively few use cases. But the reality of doing, big impactful things actually looks more like this picture on the right here. And anytime you've got that many stakeholders and that many steps and that many different things to think about, stuff's going to get complicated very quickly. So that's, really complicated, but you're not going to be able to talk through either of these diagrams with your business stakeholders and build a business case for, machine learning operations. You got to do it in their language, right? To get the time, the budget, but most importantly, the buy-in to solve these challenges. And this is how we do it. So first we set a vision for the top of the mountain and why that, AI at scale will generate value for the business. Then we explain how you need to get started by removing friction to ensure those initial success. And the stories there are relatively easy to tell compared to this danger zone, right? This middle part of the story where MLOps, becomes really necessary as a component of resilience. And this is how we explain that in business language. We say, as you get higher up this mountain, the conditions change. You need to keep maintaining the use cases already delivered while pushing further into the unknown, which inevitably exposes you to much greater risk. What if you suddenly change cloud provider? So many of you on the call will have worked somewhere where a new CTO came in and said, okay, we're changing cloud provider. That's quite a risk for machine learning scale. What if two of your competitors merge, and so customer behavior changes in your market? Or what if a global pandemic hits and now every single time series that you use in forecasting is completely wrecked? And so the answer that we propose is to build a narrative around mitigating those risks ahead of time, just as you would any other risk, by building resilience, which is just the ability to bounce back and keep going. So we're taking all that technical complexity and saying, if we want machine learning models to be a reliable asset for the company that continues to deliver the value that they do today, we need to build them and run them in a way that will be robust and resilient, and manage those risks just like any other risk in the business. The trick here, of course, is that when you went out and sold your initial use cases, the people who funded those initial use cases usually didn't prepay for this resilience. So you have to, that's why we talk about the business case for resilience, the business case for machine learning operations, because it's a long-term investment that actually benefits all of the use cases. So it's quite a different value story than the business case that got you started. And so how can you quantify the costs and the risks in that danger zone? How can you motivate your stakeholders to get behind you to build resilience? So we sometimes use another metaphor, the iceberg, where most of the mass is actually below the waterline. So above the waterline is all the cool stuff you did with the use cases, personalized recommendation, pricing, fraud detection. That was hard enough, but that was the easy stuff if you're trying to get to scale. This building of resilience is to manage all these risks below the waterline. So if you've got 10, 50, 100, 1,000 models in production, unless you change something about the way you manage that process, pretty soon all your data scientists are going to be doing is managing the use cases already delivered and not delivering new value. I mentioned before some things that you can't predict, like pandemics, and obviously constant technology change. And what we find is that if people can pull off this business case for building resilience in business language, then your stakeholders will trust you and leave you to get on with the technical side of things, and you don't need to explain any of that, because you're couching the need to build that and to make that investment in terms that they would understand for anything that's being built. We don't have time, but if you've got time to write that, if you just search for the AI memes account on Twitter, you'll see a very funny 1-minute video about a classic machine learning pipeline that's not resilient. So I highly recommend that. And you can email me and I'll send you this link. It's a good laugh, but I don't want to try showing video during a presentation. So that's how we talk about finding the business language to back up your case for MLOps. Because you need to solve this problem, to build that resilience, your use case delivery, your short-term delivery capacity will actually decrease, right? Because you're building this long-term effectiveness. So, no surprise that for each of the challenges, you need to solve them in some way. And that's hopefully quite obvious. So just to move on to some steps that you can take. Some people might think, well, we're not really there yet. We've only got a few use cases. Yes, we want to get up to the top of the mountain, but it seems like a lot of investment, a lot of work to do for stuff that we don't really need yet. And I guess you should plan to be successful. Otherwise, if you are successful, it'll be too late to solve those problems. So, only having a few models, and when I was a head of data science and machine learning in a company until January, before I joined Dataiku, we weren't running very many models in production. And so we didn't think much about MLOps. But if you are at that stage, but you have a plan to reach scale, you've got to do something early that will ensure that with each additional use case that you add, you're actually making it cheaper and cheaper to monitor those, govern those, iterate those over time. Otherwise, the costs of doing that will outweigh the benefits and you'll actually stall on your use case development. So, one customer of ours, Bank of Montreal, had a process, right, that wasn't too bad, end-to-end deployment time from 8 weeks. Some people say it takes 8 months, but nevertheless, they were doing pretty well and they managed to get that down to 2 weeks. Another thing you can do to build this resilience ahead of time, there's a great open source framework out there called Great Expectations, which can protect you against unannounced upstream data changes. Marina, I think, no, Joanna, you said about needing to ensure data quality remains sufficient through the life cycle of a machine learning model, right? So what this framework lets you do is specify the expectations of that data quality as part of your MLOps kind of framework. And then, we all need to recognize that anyone building a machine learning model is a human that makes mistakes. And so, there's no technology that protects against that. So you need to equip your data scientists with tools, support, and importantly, incentives so that what they're doing every day looks like resilience, right? If you just wait for a crisis and then realize, oh, we really should have done some more things to build resilience, that's a bit late. So a customer that we can't name, I think in the pharmaceutical industry, saves millions on maintenance, security, and compliance costs by incentivizing their people to build this kind of resilience thinking into the way that they build all their products. If you want to learn more, we've written a few books for O'Reilly. So if you just Google O'Reilly MLOps, you'll find them, but the one on the left is a business level overview, and the one on the right gets much more technical, but not really about how we do it in Dataiku, but still quite general. And just a reminder, these are my colleagues who you might find in a coffee room, but these are the topics for the next coffee room directly from the conference agenda. So I'll make the same plea I did at the start. Please stick around for the coffee sessions so that we can continue the conversation. And if we've got any more time now, happy to answer any questions or take them by email later on.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much for the presentation. Very interactive, and I'm really happy when I see the presenter is engaging the audience. Well done. Good job.
I try. Thank you.
Yeah. Bravo. So the next, we have still time for the networking coffee break, of course, as you can see on the background. But now we have 10 minutes for question and answer. So you can raise hand that we can give you mic so that you can directly ask your question, or you can type it. Ricardo, to be that brave again to come up with a question from Shell or Haj?
I have a question.
Yes, thanks.
You mentioned that part of this work for I would say monitoring the whole chain is in charge of the technical people. So the left part of your process slide, and the right one is in charge of the business people, right? And do you find easy, or do you find that business people actually understand what's expected on their side, and what are the problems and what are the reasons for doing this monitoring, and also what to leverage in order to have them understand and study and learn how to do so? Yeah,
the answer is they don't know, and so you will have to educate them. It's not something they're reading about in the news. The only thing they see in the news is, algorithms gone rogue, killer AI roams the streets. That's all they see about AI, ML gone wrong. So if that's going to be useful to get their attention, you can use that, but it doesn't lead to a very productive discussion. And it's also very difficult if you've built a model and you think it will make impact and it's running in production, and then you go to them and say, hey, can you join in the process of monitoring, iterating, governing how this model is used to make some positive impact for your business? And so again, a theme that's come across many other presentations yesterday, is the very best thing to leverage is involving them from the beginning, all the way back to the beginning, so that they are the ones driving the models that get built in the first place. Not because they will understand how the models need to be built, but we all know by now that it's not worth building models that are never going to go into production necessarily. And hopefully we're building models that are going to have some business impact, but data teams don't usually own that business impact. That's marketing or sales or operations or some business function. So again, if you leave resilience to too late, if you leave business involvement and governance to the last thing on the right, that's why I don't quite like that line, because it kind of it makes it look like it's the last thing you do. Ideally, they're part of the journey all along.
Thanks.
I totally agree. So I'm very glad you said so. And
it's all easier said than done, but
yeah, because it's not easy to involve them since the beginning when they still don't understand why they are involved in things that they find a little bit away from their.
So you don't involve them in showing them screens of data or complicated things, but you need to involve them with questions like, what would be the impact if this went wrong, right? What would be the impact if we had to turn this off because it was doing something expected? What would be the impact of, right? So you need to talk in risk language that they will understand.
You're right. You're right. Very interesting. No, scare them.
Just enough, not too much, because then they'll shut you down. Yeah. Just a little bit of fear. Just a little bit of fear.
Thanks a lot for being so brave, Marina, again, and joining with a question now. Finally, my other hero, Ricardo from Chile, is here for another question. Yes, Ricardo. Ricardo, we can hear you if you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, thanks. I was on muting one only. One thing, in Shell, we often start from, let's say, business requirement when we start with a process. Sometimes with my business here, it's funny to hear you talking because it's difficult to get the data scientist, the engineer on board on what is actually needed and not just get lost in some code that is, forgive me, sometimes totally unuseful with reality. But my question is mostly for Marina, but I'm interested also in your opinion, Sean. I love Marina, your definition of the quando, the diamonds in your things that says, well, it's an unfair question to ask how much it will cost, how much it will solve. And I think that that's the key difficult part in interaction between business and IT, in the sense that when you start for something, you aim for a result, but you cannot predict the result upfront. So how you handle that part? Because I find that challenging sometimes in creating a bit, whatever, but when it's done, I don't know.
Personally, I go around to all conferences and say this, expecting that this goes down to my managers and they will finally understand this is the point. I'm trying to spread a word.
I copied your slide to use with mine. So.
Trying to say, yeah, it's been said in those conferences, not saying that I've been saying that. So. No, but I'm trying to explain in detail the reason why, not saying they're not excuses, but they are real facts. So it's, again, everything is always back to training, to education. So trying to explain with very detailed examples. And also what was said before as well, if you start by sharing data with the managers, they think they know what happens, but when you finally go and show with good visualizations how the data actually are, big amount of data they have never seen all together, somehow that opens some door to the unexpected. So they are more available to say, oh wow, that's something we didn't expect, so what else could happen that we don't expect, and so what else could happen that changes the planning. But of course you need to do a planning. You just guess, and then since the beginning you say, okay, I do the planning, but I tell you in advance that most probably we will not be able to stick to it. So that's all I found to solve this problem.
Thanks a lot. So if you can hear me, thank you so much, Marina. Thanks, Ricardo, for as well getting engaged in this topic. We have still 2 minutes. I just have a note from Haj as well. Thank you, Shaun. I think that your work have strong ties with Marina's one, especially in her part of
Marina's answer to that question was the same as mine, which is data leaders have to do their education. It's not coming from anyone else.
Okay, another question then.
Yes, thank you. Great presentation. I would just like to ask Shaun again on the presentation. So we saw MLOps. I would like to know how machine learning operations ops are integrated into the DevOps, because
that's a whole other it's a great question.
It's very tech though. It's very tech, but I am working with some devs and sometimes I'd like to have a better understanding of their own job.
Yeah, I think the best thing to say to those developers is, I feel your pain. I see you. I hear you, because MLOps is some of the ideas of DevOps adapted for our context with data.
Okay.
But it's also, it's different, right? As difficult as DevOps is, if what they're doing is deploying changes to a website 100 times a day, it's not that it's easy, but it's predictable, and it's supposed to be predictable. Everything that's happening is predictable. We change the button from green to red, we change it back again, we put a new part of the website in. The expected behavior of that change is completely predictable ahead of time. Machine learning models, it is not. So it's, it's a little bit
yes, I think I understand. DevOps in a certain way, they are here to build the software, to build the web services. In a certain way, they are able, with the tools that they already have, with certain performance tools, automation tools, they are able in a certain way to predict themselves. The problem with machine learning is the fact of making these algorithms, being sure about the data, and thereafter they will only be able to see the results maybe in 3, 4, 5 months.
Exactly. And so you need to control the inputs, control the outputs. It's not just we deployed it, and now we've got a data pipeline, everything's fine. If we take just the DevOps view on MLOps, it'll be even more dangerous. We'll put even more models into production even faster with even fewer safeguards. And so we've got a lot more to think about on top of all the things they have to think about.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Yona from Air Liquid. Thank you so much, Shaun. Thanks a lot as well for the presentation. I'm just preparing participants for